What's your current assessment of the state of integrity in corporate America and the financial markets?
Some of the factors that are making this such a big problem, in my view, is there's just like a lot of easy flowing money. And when you're in a period where there's lots of venture checks being written for things and investors are throwing money at, anything that's growing, that kind of makes good people do bad things and bad people do worse things. Lots of easy flowing money is not a good thing for integrity. When you have lots of retail participation in the markets, I think that can lead to companies or CEOs of publicly traded companies, being a little misleading, trying to cheat around the edges to get their stock price up. When you have like a weak punishment dynamic with regulators where you can just do wrong over and over again and the fines are kind of minimal and usually they're at the corporate level and not the individual level, that's problematic. We're living in a golden age of fraud and very sad because it harms a lot of people, but it's great for me because it means I have a lot to write about and a lot to research and a lot to talk about.
Are you becoming increasingly optimistic that we're identifying this and we're going to rein it in and our regulators are going to catch on to this stuff? Or perhaps is it the opposite, where you feel like the bad actors are getting away with more and more as time goes on?
Now, with the internet being so open, you have a lot of people like me on Substack, on Twitter, on YouTube, wherever, trying to highlight misconduct, almost forming this like quasi community of like investigators highlighting this misconduct before it occurs. One example could be Mark Cahotas being a really early whistleblower on FTX before anyone was paying attention to it.
Companies that harm customers and then maybe end up failing and then harming investors and just the economy in general. So let's talk about that first category first, unless there's a framework you want to introduce before we just start going one by one.
Adam, that's a perfect question. And one of the big companies I wrote about was an auto insurance company called Root Insurance that went public in October 2020. They are a car insurance company. And what they did is they say, hey, download our app. We track your location 24/7. And based on getting the data from your phone 24/7, we can determine whether or not you're a good or bad driver. I got interested because I saw one consumer complaint about them. And then I go to state regulators and send FOIA requests for consumer complaints that consumers had filed with Root Insurance. And it was remarkable, just like hundreds and hundreds of pages of consumers saying, hey, I signed up at this great price. In the pandemic, when no one's driving, I got no accidents. They just keep increasing my renewals 50% every year, for the last 5 years, and they make it really difficult to cancel. So Root's underwriting greatness isn't actually that they're a great underwriter. It's that they lure customers in with cheap auto insurance and then just abusively renew them. Even during the pandemic, when no one was driving, every other auto company in the pandemic was like lowering rates for customers. And Root just is making the rates go up, 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 up. And in tandem with that, making it really difficult to cancel.
You talked about filing FOIA requests. First, I just want to explain what FOIA is, right? It's a Freedom of Information Act request. Just explain really briefly for people exactly what's involved in making one of those requests. And is this one of your sort of primary vehicles for really digging beneath the covers of what's happening with the companies that you investigate?
Absolutely. And one of the beauties of being the US citizen is the US government has an obligation under the Freedom of Information Act to share, public records with us. So any US citizen can go to the state regulator or federal regulator and demand public records. And part of public records are internal emails that aren't, going to be used in like an immediate dispute. Part of the public record are consumer complaints people file with their insurance commissioner or state attorney general.
All right, that sounds super fascinating. Thanks for explaining that key tool in your sleuthing here. I interrupted you. You were about to go to another company.
There was a publicly traded company called The Joint, and they were a franchisor of chiropractic clinics. So you could go to any one of their franchisees throughout the US and pay for like a chiropractic adjustment if your back was hurting. And in theory, you'd pay like $20 for an adjustment, but they were pushing this type of plan where you'd spend $80 a month to get like unlimited or 5 adjustments a month and like get on their just like renewal cycle. And they started to grow. They were expanding their franchise base rapidly. All the metrics were looking good. Wall Street was taking them to like 40 times revenue. It was insane because everybody's like, look, they've hit an inflection point. This business is doing great. We think they have a long runway for growth. When I filed FOIA requests for consumer complaints, very similar pattern to Root Insurance, where people are like, I didn't even know I was signing up for this monthly plan. I'm being billed and I can't cancel. The thing that the joint did that was really abusive is in order to cancel, especially in the pandemic, there wasn't a phone number you could call. There wasn't a way to cancel online. You need to drive in person to your chiropractic clinic and fill out a 2-page form. And people are like, I've done this and I still can't cancel. And just at a high level here, I'm saying, wait a minute, it looks like the company's like franchise base is one probably unhealthy, even if the financial metrics look good. If they're doing this type of stuff, this isn't sustainable. Once the pandemic subsides, people will be able to cancel and people will be pissed. You can do things as a business that help your financial results. Making it impossible to cancel a subscription helps your retention and helps your financial results. So every investor thinks your value is increasing, but it's actually dramatically decreasing because you're tarnishing your entire future for a short-term benefit.
You have another one here that's just companies that lack any real underlying economic substance or kind of actively go out of their way to mislead investors. And by mislead, I'm sure lying is included under that umbrella as well. So what can you tell us about these companies?
Oftentimes companies that, as I say, lack economic substance, what you really have is just like a shell of a company, pretending to have something substantive and lying to retail investors to generate a lot of hype. An example of that would be Ag Eagle Aerial Systems, which was at one point like $1 billion company. And they described themselves saying that we're a pioneer in advanced commercial drone technologies. That's what they said. They had all these investor presentations being like, we're building drones that can deliver packages. We're making drones that can, look at marijuana fields to determine whether or not marijuana crop is growing well. Just all this bizarre stuff. And then literally within an hour of just reading the SEC filings and just trying to understand what substantively is going on, you're like, wait, they have one employee in research and development. In the last 5 years, they've spent a total of like $200,000 in research and development. These are like comical numbers for $1 billion company. Like, what the heck? You look at the investor base involved, and there was like a Liechtenstein-based hedge fund called Alpha Capital Ansel that has been involved in like 90, or dozens of other like pump and dump operations and fined by the SEC. And it's like, how is this possibly $1 billion company? It just seems so obvious. Like one photo that we can show is that if you look at the company's drones on their YouTube page, it's literally a remote controlled airplane with the GoPro attached. That's what they said as their like revolution in, aviation drone technology. And this company reached $1 billion market cap. And it wasn't even heavily shorted. And, how does that happen? It happens because the company goes out of their way to try to mislead investors. One of the things they did is they had the chairman's daughter create a locked YouTube video that had the Amazon logo next to the Ag Eagle Aerial Technologies logo, to make it seem like a partnership was coming. And then all these stock promoters started saying, hey, guess what? We did some research. We found this locked YouTube video where the chairman's daughter is hinting at an Amazon partnership. And you're getting all these gullible investors to think, oh, I found the next big thing. Let me invest to get the stock up. But it's terrible because the company actually has nothing. And it ended up falling 99%.